welcome people online and in the hall. I've got the ANA of the ANA Mini Festival here, André Cormier and Andrea Young. I trust many of you were watching the live stream of the concert last night, if you weren't in the hall last night. And I actually wanted to talk a little bit about the pieces last night. So, you know, if you're watching this, you know, years from now, go back to the previous night's posting and check it out. But I was just always curious about how people think about the durations of their pieces and how the form of it works. Like, it strikes me that the proportion and the way things move is crucial for both of your musics, almost more so because it doesn't fall into kind of easy you know, kind of gestural narrative worlds that, you know, give you the expected climax when it's supposed to happen, and sort of, you know, nice tidy durations that you know, kind of fit within certain kinds of conditioned expectations. So, but maybe Andrea, let's start with you. Like when you were thinking about writing the commission, I guess a few things, like at what point did you kind of get an idea of what the total duration would be? How did you come about the idea of the 4 movements? How do you see them relating?
I didn't have a duration in mind until I sorted out what the movements would be. In fact, I think I called Andre at the moment where I was actually sorting it out, because I needed some feedback. And I explained that I was centering the piece around the combination of the tape machine with the electronics.
Right.
And then moving that into the ensemble. And the tape machine has this very simple parameter of how much echo. And so it was actually Andre who said, well, it sounds like you've got your 3 movements, because I explained that it's like as little echo as possible, medium echo and maximum echo. So I was saying that this is how I'm forming it. And he said, well, it's like when you go out to a restaurant and the chef is making scallops, and he has scallops with rosemary, scallops with salt and pepper, and scallops with butter.
Scallops.
So that you get to understand scallops after the end of the art piece or the food.
So it was loop.
So, well, the thing was that there was, and that's why there was an extra movement, was that there was looping that was part of it. So it was actually 4 parameters that were like on the, you know, that are the extremes of a very small window. Like, that's like saying, I mean, that's a really small amount of difference in reality, but by making them into 4 different movements, it accentuates it.
I mean, this is kind of an aside, but is it normal for you to start sort of have the apparatus, as it were, like the technological apparatus, as being like the kind of the first step of a piece?
Well, I think that it's that's part of the instrument that I'm bringing to the piece, and I think that having studied electronics in a more academic way, then it makes you want to like think of the poetics of your instrument and how that relates to the piece.
Yeah.
So it's not just a side, like I don't just happen to play electronics with what's going on, it has to be integrated. So that's what I thought, to integrate the actual instrument with the music.
So you end up with 4 movements then. Mm-hmm. I mean,
and then
but
duration.
yeah.
Right. So well, what I had made, I thought, let's experiment with 10 minutes each and just see how that moves around. And then once I'd written the music, then there was a bit of an extra time to fill in this section, and I sort of fit it into about a half an hour form that felt right.
Yeah.
That was it. You know,
Sure
it was just about how long can I do this for, and how long do I want to do that for. It definitely is not my wasn't my interest to challenge people with time. I don't generally do something for excessive amounts of time to the point of tears, in case, you know what I mean, to test people's responses.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't seem to be about that. It didn't seem to be about that kind of kind of protracted sort of periodicity.
Sort of, it's pretty organic, actually, in a way, for me. Like, the durations are an organic process of figuring out how long does that feel right for. If the actual intent behind the piece was something about duration, then it would be more of the extremes of pushing those boundaries.
Yeah.
But it was not about that.
Yeah.
So,
No.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound at all like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think your piece does either. That is something though that people talk about with your music a lot, though. I mean, and that was. Did you figure out how long that version of it was?
Last night?
Yeah.
Concert? I don't know. I was guessing somewhere around 50.
Around 50.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
That's what it sort of felt like.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because the first time we ran it, it was like 27. So that's.
Yeah. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but it felt. Let me think about it. I don't know, but it was longer than 40.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, it was, for me, the pace of it was beautiful. I mean, we have books of a score of a string quartet with download code that it goes on for about 3 hours and 45 minutes, right? I mean, I've listened to that all the way through now, I guess 6 times. Yeah, and it's
Means you had
you got 4 hours to kill. It's like, hey, I've got an idea. But I mean,
That's nice.
it always seems different lengths, for one thing. But I mean, I guess that's the thing. It seems, in some ways, it seems very obvious that anytime you write something with that kind of consistency that goes on for close to 4 hours, in a sense that you would think this extreme duration has to be an active part of its aesthetic. On the other hand, it doesn't seem like, it seems very different, for instance, than late Feldman to me, where that I think because of the way he's playing with memory over that big time frame, it really does seem about scale and little architectural proportions within those 4 to 6 hour pieces, and your music doesn't seem that way to me. It seems just more about kind of an empirical, emotional for sure, but empirical process too, as things unravel. But I mean, anyway, how do you come up with these durations?
Well, I don't. I mean, those durations are completely ensemble driven, right? I mean,
Right, but I mean, the quartet though couldn't be. I mean, what's the fastest you could do that quartet?
Well, there's
Realistic.
96 pages. Let's say you did there's some of those that are as short as 10 seconds.
Yeah,
So if a quartet was really, really going like, we got to get to dinner, they could blow through that in pretty, a reasonable amount of time. Cheating on the silence durations between, and then just let's just do them 10 seconds each. That's the rule.
presumably though, you wouldn't.
I'd love to hear it,
Wow.
but I mean, I'd love to hear it, and I mean, it's written in a way that if they were to do that, I did not tell them anywhere that wasn't allowed. Right?
Right.
So I have to live with a quartet doing that. And that's okay with me. If I didn't want them to do that, I would have written it clearly in the thing. I take a lot of time writing my instructions. I consider the wording really closely. I consider what I want the performers to do, what they, I consider all these things. And if I wanted them to play it for a long time, I would say, So, you see
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Is there? I mean, it didn't even occur to me to ask this at first because you get, in that world of open scores, since Cage. I mean, you just sort of take that sort of freedom for granted almost. But I mean, what are your reasons for wanting that kind of openness, where a piece could be anywhere from 45 minutes to 3 hours and 45 minutes long?
Just for the sheer, I mean, let's say that piece, 96 pages, 96 little snowflakes, right? And I said, well, they all have to be at least 1 minute long. There's 96 of them. And I'm going to put that constraint so that we can't hear at least one of them really quickly. And
Right.
there's one of them that's really quick, and it's great. I wouldn't want them all to be that way, but that's my preference. But if the ensemble decides, and they're the boss, so I need to leave it open so that we can experience these possibilities.
But so it's for you. I mean, is it more an ethical thing about them being the boss, or is it more a case that you just want to have that many different experiences nested within that one sort of resource of material?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I mean, I really do believe that performers have to become artists again, and not just, people that
Yeah.
we tell what to do. They've got something to say too, and that's important to me, that they come up with their side of that story. Yeah.
You had some improvisation in your piece. I mean, fairly circumscribed, but were you happy with how that worked? I mean, it's not some members in that group improvise a lot, but probably most don't. I think they're canny and experienced, but I mean, so there was things around the looping and that seemed pretty natural to them, but it was. I guess again though, just sort of why would you choose to do that rather than notate the whole thing?
I think if I mean I have to like say that I haven't been writing music for ensembles like in as a practice is 100% my output. I've been working as a musician and performing myself, and so there is for me it's natural to make things my own a little bit. So it's not innate to me to transcribe exactly what someone should do. It's very difficult for me to do that, and it wouldn't be my the more I work with that kind of writing, it would always be to find solutions where that openness is part of the composition, and to get even more specific about that so that they feel comfortable. Because when the instrumentalist asks you, what do you mean by this and stuff, that's not what you want. You want them to know what you mean by what's on the page. But right. so there was a point where for me, I needed to find a looseness so that I felt comfortable to perform. Because as soon as we got to the actually improvising page, I got happy on stage because I was like, finally. I much prefer to be in a sort of a world where I'm free to do what I want. But that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy the challenge of kind of morphing with an ensemble, which I think brought out something new for me, But that's just because that's what I've been practicing. So I like the openness as a musician myself.
No, it works, and I mean, but you're a wonderful improviser though, because it's not like it's not like there was this sense that you hit the improv page and now you could do anything. No. If anything, it was just so seamless to what you'd the prescriptions that you had given yourselves to. Yeah, I mean, I guess won't name names, but I was involved with Vondelweiser composers in a piece that Christian Wolff wrote for them. Actually, that same festival when we met the first time.
Okay.
And there were some other improvisers, but I mean, Christian had left a lot of things open, but it was written for the Vondelweiser people, and they all play very quietly. But there was a couple of people who were brought in, and they would just be doing the most, thunderous fortissimos and giant crescendos because they could. This was the section where we could do this, and then so you get this amazing thing where the Vondelweiser guys who were very sweet folks were sitting around going, "Oh yeah, no, that's okay. Hey, but Antoine, do you remember the first time we played it? Do you remember how quiet that was? Oh yeah, that wasn't bad. No, it didn't matter at all. It was just like, oh yeah, if this is the part where you can do anything you want, you're going to do it all." And I don't mean, which was kind of a shame actually, but it makes for an anecdote. But there was absolutely. I mean, I would have never known what was the improvised section of your piece if I hadn't seen the score. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it was really, that was the goal, to find that halfway point where you'd get what you want out of the performer, but without having to prescribe it exactly.
Yeah. I guess it's sort of related to this. Andre, your piece, bound in a booklet with rings. The musicians can start on any page, but it was significant that you didn't get rid of the binding, and just shuffle the pages. It still mattered that regardless of where you started, that the succession was still, as you had bound it. And you were clear that mattered in terms of how the material went together, even though, I mean, there are a few million possibilities, right?
A million something.
Yeah. So how did, I mean, I almost feel like I can hear that, but how does that work? Like what would go wrong if someone got rid of the binding and just shuffled the pages and played them in a new order?
Well, the important thing to know is that there's one correct alignment.
Yeah, your note said that.
There's one correct alignment, and
Alignment of what?
of pages. So if everyone knew which one was the first page, they would play in the correct alignment. But they don't know that, and they can't know that unless they sit there and do Schenkerian analysis for a century. They might come up with it.
Whoa.
But there is that one version.
That's a long.
If I was to show you in an analysis, you would immediately see it. You would go,
It's like a really long version of "Somewhere My Love," right? I'm going to be looking for that one now.
Right.
Moon River.
Not quite. But there is yeah. I mean, and it was composed so that any possibility would have some musical sense.
Yeah,
That was not good. That was a deal breaker if it didn't. So
no, it was uncanny because you'd fall in love with certain kinds of sonorities and changes, and you'd be so sad to think that was the last time you were going to hear that, and then the next one would be like, oh, well, it's different, but yeah, now that one.
yeah, so it's sort of a real-time shuffler, in a way.
But it's true, the coherence is still a strange, strong part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I did notice that you put that about there being the one correct version in your notes, so you're good with the listener knowing that.
Yeah, I think it's important if you're going to talk about the structure that it's not just, oh, wow, because, you could just do that. You could just perforate holes and put rings on it and go, here you go, Or you could just shuffle the pages up. Who cares? But that's why the rings are so important, because it has to be circular. And it has to be circular. People have said, well, why couldn't it just be a bunch of pages and then, you just make sure you don't shuffle them? Well, no, that's not going to happen. And then if you bind it and you say, well, just start at whatever, well, just the bind implies a first page. But the rings do not imply first page. There's no title page. Every page is just identically typeset.
Yeah.
So you really don't, there's no sort of any feature that would give away the first page, because it would defeat the whole purpose, obviously.
Do you ever think you'll make a secret recording session just for yourself, where you'll get musicians to play the correct version? Like, I mean, there is still that incredible tease about this piece, is that, that, you know, like, I feel like I want to pay you money to let me in on what that version is, so that I can hear that. But
no, I mean, I don't think it really matters in a way.
Yeah, well, clearly, because I mean, I had the privilege of hearing a whole bunch of versions of it, and I loved them all.
Yeah, I mean, but
it's still a very interesting choice to decide that there's like to even use the word correct is
I mean,
it's very piquant.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do it for a tease or anything like that. I did it because I'm really interested in sort of defying sort of straight time, right? Recording. I mean, we recorded this last night. It was great, but you know, that's one in a million, quite literally, possibilities. So it just gives, now in this day of sort of we can record everything, it just seems, for me personally, it just seems a shame to record something and then it's almost like the score part just kind of dies a little bit, you know, because it's kind of, it's just okay, we've got this, you know, and everyone's going to say that's the definitive version, right? And then there's a bit of baggage that sort of gets to it, and blah, 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 blah. But with this, that doesn't play. That game is completely out, you know?
Well, I mean, except that hypothetically there could be a recorded version of it that would become the version for people who go back to it. I mean, I guess for me, it's just they're not really at odds. They're just two different things. Because I mean, the thing I love about recorded music is that it never sounds the same every time. You know it's the same, but it never sounds the same every time you put it on anyways. Mm-hmm. But then likewise, though, I mean, the thing I love about open scores is just, you know, how many different things can come from one score. Yeah. Although having said that, I have so many recordings of my work that are just played really poorly, and I can't remember what I wrote those, so that they actually became the piece, and then I had people do it right, and it was like, whoa, what the hell's that? Yeah. But I mean, that's another story. Yeah. Let's check the time here. Make sure this. Yeah.
I have a question about that.
Oh yeah.
So in the piece that I'm performing tonight by you, there's a similar kind of option shuffling thing for the performer, and it occurs to me that sometimes I look back at the score and I see like, oh, I wonder, is that like, you know, is that one like the correct version in a way, and then the time options are what shuffles it?
No. No, because that's the precursor to the rings. It's really a precursor. But with the ring thing, it allows the performer to guide it, the ensemble to guide it. It's a way of doing it ensemble-wise. With the timelines like yours, it's a bit of a closed system. You know, there's all these different possibilities, but you know, it's a bit of a closed system. Right,
and it's like a little bit more like manual labor on the performer part to make the choice, whereas the rings are like in action.
Yeah, it was already. It was a way to get away from the stop clock thing. I just really never liked that stopwatch thing, and I worked a lot, thought a lot about how to get away with stopwatch, but still retain an ensemble cohesiveness. So I started thinking about the chef idea. If one person was the boss, and then that would change throughout the ensemble who was the boss, then it was sort of egalitarian. It has all these nice political implications, and it works kind of really well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was wondering for people who didn't know the score, David.
Yeah, technical question about that. I had the impression that the chef thing works because every page has the same number of lines. Is that the case?
Yes, that's how it works. Exactly.
That was my question, though. Were you able, like, so Stephen is the third line, the piano is the third line of the piece. He's the only one where he cues everyone together and cuts everybody off at the same time. Like, were you able to suss that out as not
afterwards? Oh, you know.
right? So that didn't become obvious then, that there was repeating roles that the different conductors had for their lines.
I didn't
that repeated.
know when I was listening anything about the page structure.
That's great.
And I was just, you know, and I just, it was obvious that it wasn't always the same person, and I didn't even think of a question at that time.
Yeah. Well, that's.
Yeah,
I mean, that speaks to the strength of the piece, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to know that it doesn't become sort of this regular, oh, okay, it's this guy and it's that girl. You know, it's, you know, it felt a bit more flowy.